countries to fund programs that support the NDCs of countries like Burundi. So over the last 6 months, we have been engaging with NDC Partnership to try and build a new framework of Article 6 for Burundi, and also to prepare a pilot project that is a flagship, a lighthouse, an example project for Article 6. And so what we're going to talk about today is what we are doing with NDC Partnership for the framework on Article 6. We're going to talk about the Weza Power project, the Electrification project, bringing the rate of electrification in the country from 12% to 70%. And then we're going to talk about how we do this. This is through Article 6. So I'm going to be welcoming you, so thank you very much. My name is Eli Sandler. I'm the managing partner of the Article 6 group. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave a bit early. So after my presentation, the panel is going to be with my colleague Jackson from the Article 6 group, with Andrew from Weza Power, as well as Monsieur Astel from the Government of Burundi. So now I'm happy to begin. Astel, do you want to come and make your presentation? Astel, as you know, is the designated national authority of Burundi. So he is in charge of all relations with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Astel, vous voulez venir? C'est comme ça.
Bon après-midi. Alors, bon après-midi tout le monde. Merci beaucoup d'être ici et je suis honoré d'être devant vous pour vous présenter l'article 6 de l'accord de Paris et l'état de mise en œuvre au Burundi. Vous pouvez me demander pourquoi l'accord de Paris. L'accord de Paris est venu pour remplacer le protocole de Kyoto. Le protocole de Kyoto qui avait des lacunes parce que les pays n'ont pas vraiment honoré leurs ambitions, leurs engagements ambitieux. C'est pourquoi l'accord de Paris est venu pour lever cette lacune. Alors, comme vous le savez, l'accord, le contenu, je vais vous parler de l'introduction, par après l'état de mise en œuvre de l'article 6, et par après faire un aperçu de l'assistance technique et terminer par la conclusion. Alors, comme introduction, comme je l'ai déjà dit, l'accord de Paris a cet objectif est venu pour un objectif de fixer l'objectif à long terme de limiter la température mondiale de 1,5 degrés Celsius et en dessous de 2 degrés Celsius. En vertu de l'accord de Paris, le Burundi doit communiquer sa contribution déterminée au niveau national. Un plan d'action doit le communiquer à la Convention de cadre des Nations Unies sur le changement climatique, montrant des activités ambitieuses contribuant à la réduction des émissions de gaz à effet de serre et à renforcer la résilience climatique afin d'atteindre les objectifs de l'accord de Paris. Alors, les pays à l'accord de Paris peuvent choisir, y compris le Burundi, peuvent choisir de poursuivre la coopération volontaire dans la mise en œuvre de ces actions climatiques pour permettre effectivement l'ambition accrue dans les actions d'atténuation des adaptations, mais aussi pour promouvoir le développement durable et l'intégrité environnementale. Alors, quel est le temps de mise en œuvre de l'article 6 de l'accord de Paris? Alors, afin d'atteindre l'objectif ambitieux inscrit dans la CDN du Burundi, dans notre cas, nous sommes invités, comme les Burundais, à mettre en œuvre l'article 6 de l'accord de Paris afin effectivement de stimuler les marchés du carbone et les investisseurs privés, surtout les investisseurs privés, tout ce qui peut conduire à de nouvelles réductions des émissions mondiales de gaz à effet de serre et à la croissance économique. Alors, à cet égard, le Burundi a fait des efforts, continue à faire des efforts pour établir un cadre national de marché carbone à travers l'article 6. Et en faisant le Burundi, à travers le ministère de l'Environnement, de l'Agriculture et de l'Élevage, a déjà mis en place une autorité nationale désignée, bien connue, avec la nomination des membres du comité technique. Les membres sont déjà là, les membres du comité technique sont déjà là, avec des rôles bien précis. Alors, à ce stade, le pays, pour mettre en œuvre l'article 6, il éprouve des difficultés d'ordre de renforcement de capacité et aussi un cadre réglementaire qui n'existe pas. Alors, suite à cette situation, nous devons alors venir auprès des bailleurs pour faire une requête d'assistance technique, une requête de financement, et une requête d'assistance technique pour que l'article 6 puisse être mis en œuvre au niveau national. Alors, on va commencer pour étudier, pour learn by doing, on va commencer par un projet pilote que vous connaissez vous tous, qui est l'électrification et cuisson propre au Burundi, comme des études de cas. D'autres projets, comme les autres l'ont dit, vont suivre. Cet appui contribuera au développement d'autres documents de projet, de rendre bancables et de soumettre aux bailleurs, comme ici à la COP. Ici, nous sommes ici pour vendre nos projets. Alors, à ce stade, non, excusez. Alors, comme je vous l'ai dit, l'assistance technique proposée ici vise à répondre à ces enjeux à travers deux composantes ciblées. Première composante, c'est la composante en rapport avec le renforcement des capacités et les infrastructures nationales, où la conception de ce dernier sera, comme je l'ai dit, renforcer les infrastructures nationales. Cette infrastructure nationale consistera à établir un cadre de l'article 6, comme je l'ai dit. Ensuite, mettre en place un registre national fonctionnel. Deuxièmement, il faudra concevoir aussi un cadre national de marché carbone de l'article 6. Alors, sur ce, le Burundi aura besoin, à travers le comité technique, de mettre en place un processus d'autorisation nationale. Un processus d'autorisation nationale sera supervisé par le comité technique pour établir effectivement les listes de projets qui seront prioritaires dans le processus de l'article 6. Préciser aussi le statut des transactions carbone en matière de partage des taxes et de revenus. Parce qu'une unité carbone a un prix. Alors les unités évitées seront vendues pour un prix. Alors, des modèles aussi de documents, comme je l'ai dit, des documents de projet seront développés à partir de cette assistance technique. Alors, il y aura aussi des législations nationales qui seront aussi élaborées visant à habiliter l'autorité nationale désignée, donner à RND le pouvoir d'émettre et d'exécuter les ajustements correspondants. On aura besoin aussi d'un appui pour la mise à jour de la contribution déterminée au niveau national, pour la traduction de la CDN, tenant compte du cadre de marché du carbone, conformément à l'article 6 de l'accord de Paris, tenant compte du cadre de marché. La CDN existe, mais la CDN ne tient pas compte du cadre du marché de carbone. La CDN aussi ne tient pas le suivi, la notification et la vérification, ne tient pas compte des projets préparés sur l'article 6 de l'accord de Paris. Alors, un autre appui, le budget aussi jouer un rôle de renforcement des capacités, des formations, de la sensibilisation, pour permettre aux parties prenantes du gouvernement local au Burundi, du Burundi, pour exploiter et maintenir le système, y compris l'analyse et l'autorisation des projets. Alors, on aura aussi à appuyer l'autorité nationale désignée du Burundi, bien sûr, à participer à des événements internationaux comme les SB ou les COP. Alors, la composante 2, il y a deux composantes. Ça, c'est la deuxième composante. L'assistance technique nous permettra, en tant qu'autorité nationale désignée, d'élaborer, en tant que pays, d'élaborer des projets pilotes. On va commencer par le projet pilote, qu'on appelle Weza Power. Vous avez eu l'occasion d'en savoir beaucoup plus avec le gouvernement du Burundi, pour effectivement démontrer le processus de l'Electrification 6 sera consisté à développer aussi, par exemple, des projets pilotes, comme je l'ai déjà dit, mais aussi d'autres projets, je l'ai déjà dit. On aura aussi à élaborer la documentation du pays, du projet. Je l'ai déjà dit, ça c'est une tautologie. L'élément principal alors sera aussi le document de conception d'activité d'atténuation, la note d'idée d'activité d'atténuation, les lettres de non-objection au départ et d'autorisation d'autre part. Ça se fera en deux étapes. Il y aura aussi un engagement auprès des investisseurs. Une fois la documentation en place, une lettre d'autorisation obtenue, le projet devra s'engager auprès des investisseurs pour obtenir des accords d'exploitation contraignants et des engagements de cofinancement pour les résultats des mesures d'atténuation transférées à l'échelle nationale. L'article 6. Ça, c'est le résumé, mais le budget nous permettra de faire des tournées de présentation pour mobiliser les investissements des développeurs internationaux, par exemple, lors des forums, comme je l'ai déjà dit. Cela, effectivement, garantira le Burundi que le Burundi est représenté de manière adéquate sur la scène internationale et qu'il bénéficie des dernières avancées et opportunités en matière de finances climatiques. Alors, ça c'est le budget de l'assistance technique proposé à l'NDC Partnership. Ces deux composantes, je l'ai déjà dit, ça c'est le budget total de 600 000. Mais le budget, c'est pour les deux composantes. Comme j'ai dit, il y aura d'autres projets qui seront développés. Il y aura un autre budget additionnel qui sera demandé auprès d'autres bailleurs qui sont ici et qui sont ailleurs. Alors, en conclusion, nous pouvons dire que le Burundi a la volonté de mettre en application ses engagements ambitieux à travers les actions visant à réduire les émissions de gaz à effet de serre et à renforcer la résilience climatique afin d'atteindre les objectifs de l'accord de Paris. Il est aussi disposé à mettre en œuvre l'article 6 de l'accord de Paris et il est confronté, effectivement, comme je me l'ai déjà dit, des difficultés de renforcement des capacités, de mettre en place un cadre national de marché carbone ou de crédit carbone, mais aussi de mettre en place des infrastructures nationales. Alors, comme je l'ai déjà dit, il y a des projets. On commencera par le projet pilote, Weza Power, et les autres projets continueront avec un budget qui sera, avec un appui qui sera sollicité auprès des bailleurs. Alors, je profite de l'occasion pour encourager les porteurs de projets, les développeurs de projets, surtout la société civile, les jeunes. Oui, les jeunes, je les ai rencontrés quelque part, ils ont plaidé, ils ont des projets, mais il faut qu'ils soient appuyés pour que ces projets puissent être développés, mais dans le sens de développer des projets générant des unités carbone et de les vendre, de générer de budgets, de l'argent. Et cet argent sera utilisé pour d'autres travaux au niveau du pays. Alors, c'est ici que s'achève mon exposé. Merci beaucoup.
Merci Estelle. Donc, Avant le panel et avant la présentation de Andrew de Weza Power, je veux répondre à une question de Monsieur le Vice-Président de Burundi. On a fait un événement avec lui ce matin. Et il a demandé où sont les fonds pour payer pour ces projets. Donc, Monsieur Raster, il a dit, ça c'est la structure de la régulation pour ce projet. Et moi, je vais parler maintenant, en anglais, de notre projet pour enlever des fonds des investisseurs pour Article 6. Donc, my name is Eli Sandler. I am the managing partner of Article 6 Group, and I'm a partner of Weza Power. So what I'm going to talk about is the Article 6 component in the large project that we've developing. So we've been working with Aster and his team on the policy framework in Burundi, and that is what part of the question for NDC Partnership is about. But part of it is also to set up and build a pilot project that will demonstrate the ability of Article 6 in Burundi to raise funding. So I'm going to talk about the electrification and clean cooking from a finance and a carbon perspective, and then I'm going to hand over to Andrew, who's going to talk about how this is going to transform the economy of the country. And then we're going to have a panel, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave before that. So in May, we went to Burundi, and we conducted a survey amongst rural households. And what we found is that, as you know if you're from Burundi, the vast majority of households, they rely on charcoal and they rely on wood for cooking. Now, this has many, many negative impacts. First of all, health. Second, environment. You cut down trees and you make charcoal and it creates emissions and it creates deforestation, but it's also very expensive. And so what we found is that the environmental benefits are that at the moment, 80% of households are cooking with wood. And that means that if you can switch from cooking with wood to cooking with electricity, you can stop deforestation that is endemic in Burundi. And the same goes for charcoal. And you stop carbon emissions. There's the environmental benefits, but at the same time, there are these economic benefits, which is we went to individual households in rural areas, and we asked them, how much money are they spending on cooking? How much money are they spending on buying charcoal and buying wood? And the answer is that about 40% of the monthly budget of a household right now is being spent on wood and charcoal. Now, when you switch to clean cooking and you switch to the electricity tariff, that number plummets. So you have environmental benefits and you have economic benefits. And so what we want to do is turn these environmental benefits and these economic benefits into an emission reduction credit that through Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, that part of it was finalized on Monday morning in COP, can fund, first of all, paying for these cook stoves, these electric cook stoves, and second of all, can actually subsidize the tariff. So you create a virtuous circle where the tariff goes down, and so more people plug into the grid, and so more people do electric cooking, and so more people plug into the grid. And the way this works is, first we go to Burundi and we calculate the baseline. So we have to figure out if we want to generate emission reductions credits, if we want to say how many emissions reductions is our project saving, we have to figure out what people are doing today so that we can see after that what they're doing with the new stoves. So we go out and we do a baseline. And when we went in May, we figured out how this is going to work. So we're using a certification standard called Gold Standard. This is one of the largest carbon registries in the world. We have a specific project type. The project scope is countrywide. And there's all sorts of technical details that me and my team would be very happy to talk to you afterwards. But the point is we're beginning to register this in the standard way as a carbon project. What happens next? Then you look at what the impact is going to be. So you see that with electric cooking versus without electric cooking, you generate on average 1 million tons or 1.2 million tons of CO2. And that goes up and up and up if you combine with the electrification benefit from putting households on the grid with the fact that you're not doing deforestation and you're not burning charcoal. And so what we can get to is a total over the course of the project of 12 million tons of CO2. And that has an economic value because there are countries that are members of NDC Partnership that have international goals, international pledges. For example, the United Kingdom, a very, very ambitious goal to reduce its emissions by 80% now, 83%, by 2035. And it's actually probably not going to make it. But if there's a gap, they can make up some of that gap by helping Burundi to emit less. And so everyone wins. There's less carbon in the atmosphere, so the world wins. The UK can reach an ambitious target, so the UK wins. And Burundi gets financing, so Burundi wins. So that's what we're trying to do with this project. And from an economic perspective, and Andrew is going to talk about the much wider electrification program, this actually is not just free because of the carbon, it actually makes you lower the tariff. Because the more demand you have for the grid, the better the economics of the developer. And also because the carbon credits are quite expensive and can get quite a lot of money, you can use part of the revenue from the carbon to lower the tariff further, which brings more people onto the grid, which lets you lower the tariff even further. So what you see on screen is our projections, and again, we have to do much more work, of how this cooking project is going to lower the tariff from 20 cents as a baseline, 20 cents per kilowatt hour, down to something like 15 in the first year, 16 in the second year, and then leveling off at about 18 cents per kilowatt hour throughout the course of the project, which makes this affordable for rural households in Burundi. I'm not going to go into this in detail because I think it's too much, but there are a lot of different ways we can structure this project. You can structure the project by selling Article 6 credits after you've delivered your emissions reductions. So we would go in, we would give the cook stoves, we would monitor the emissions reductions, and you would sell the credit. This is sort of like a revenue for the project, in the same way as you might sell power or you might sell anything else. Or you can try and get money up front. And so you can use Article 6 to structure basically a grant to the project. And these have very different impacts on the nature of the financing of the project. We've completed a full feasibility study and financial model as the Article 6 group, which we're happy to share with anyone, which shows the different ways we can structure this and how it will impact the tariff, how it will impact emissions, and then ultimately how it will impact our goal, which is to increase electrification in Burundi. The next step, what we want to do is create an electric cooking pilot. So Weza Power is bringing the rate of electrification in Burundi from 12% to 70% by 2030. It's an astounding number, an amazing vision that's part of Burundi Vision 2040. And what we eventually want to do is give every household we connect an electric cook stove. But in order to do that, we need to figure out what are the right types of stoves. When I went to Burundi in May, and people here will know this, people generally cook with a pot on the floor around charcoal. And so there's a lot of cultural practices that we have to think about. How do you make people use an electric stove that it doesn't disrupt their lives? That people actually start using this type of electric cooking. So we would like to do a pilot of first 1,000 homes and then 10,000 homes. And you heard Aster talk about two things in his remarks. First of all, the climate finance framework that is needed for Article 6, very, very important. We're going to be developing that with Burundi. But then also paying for this pilot. Because before we raise $150 million to give every household in Burundi a stove, first we have to figure out what kind of stove they're going to use. We have to figure out who in the village, the colline, who is going to be able to help people understand how the cooking works. How is it going to change people's practices? Are they still going to use some carbon, some charcoal, or is it only going to be electric? And so over the next 2 to 3 months from January, we're going to be planning the pilot project for the stove. That's everything from monitoring to technical expertise. And then throughout the course of 2025, we're going to be implementing it. So the first connections from Weza Power are going to happen in May or June. And when we connect new households to the grid, we're also going to give them this electric cook stove to form the basis of this overall project. As Aster commented, we're working with NDC Partnership on Burundi's Article 6 framework. We went through and we did an audit of everything that would be needed to help them. We know that, for example, at the moment, the NDC is available only in French. We want to translate it to English so we can bring it to investors and show how this is going to work. So we recommend transferring it to English with an explicit description of the Article 6 process. We know that we need a national Article 6 process. This is the Article 6 committee that involves every ministry and is chaired by the Ministry of Finance. We're supporting setting that up. So we're presenting examples of what has been done around the world. We're showing the best practices of how Burundi can follow other countries in Africa to have an Article 6 framework. And there's a couple other things as well. We're building a national registry. So when you issue a credit, you need to make sure that it's monitored and it's reported and it's verified. And you need to make sure that you're not double counting it. You need to make sure that only one person is owning this carbon emission. So we're creating a process to register and track emissions reductions. And then finally, we're looking at international agreements. So many of the Article 6 transactions, but not all of them, take place within the framework of bilateral agreements. For example, we helped in the Article 6 group Morocco negotiate some of its agreements. And so we're trying to find ways that Burundi can potentially reach out to other governments, for example, Switzerland, South Korea, Japan, that would allow them to buy these credits at a much higher price. And so there's technical assistance in negotiating agreements with Singapore, Japan, and Switzerland. This is part of the NDC Partnership ask. My final slide is the overall pilot. I've gone through these very, very quickly, but we're happy to share the slides afterwards, and we developed them with NDC Partnership. In 2024, we've basically been getting to where we are today. We did the initial baseline study. We looked at the financial model. We figured out how many emissions reductions this is going to create. And then throughout 2025, we start the clean cooking pilot in tandem with the rollout of electrification that Andrew is going to talk about. And then these are the rest of our visions up to 2026, and then eventually 2030 is that 70% target. And so we're going to have 3 presentations before the panel. The first was from Esther about the Burundi's perspective on this. Why have they come to NDC Partnership and what do they need? What I've talked about is what is this clean cooking component that's going to allow us to generate Article 6 credits and lower the tariff. And then finally, I'm going to hand over now to Andrew from Weza Power, who's going to talk about why are we doing all of this? So why is it important to give households a cook stove, and why is it important to lower the tariff? It's because Weza Power has a vision for how to use Article 6 and use this work to completely transform the economy of Burundi. So I'm happy to hand over now to Andrew, my colleague. And thank you very much. Unfortunately, I have to run, but my email address is on the screen, and we'll be very happy to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. His Excellency, Minister of Environment, Agriculture and Livestock, the Director General of Energy at the Ministry of Hydrology, Energy and Mines, members of the Burundi delegation, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for attending today's event and participating. My name is Andrew Carter. I'm the Director of Project Development at Weza Power. I did prepare a slide deck for this, so I don't know if... Yeah, when the slides come up, I'm gonna give an overview of the Weza Power project, just to give everyone a bit more context on what we're the project that's under development, and where the e-cooking component fits in. Don't have slides. Well, let me get started without the slides so that we don't have to wait for them. So Weza Power is part of the Anzana Electric Group. Anzana has the mission of rapidly accelerating electricity access across Africa in order to stimulate economic growth. So we develop, invest in, and operate assets across the utility value chain. Projects in our portfolio include largely run-of-river hydro, baseload, renewable projects on the generation side, and as well as distribution assets. Those are developed either as part of an integrated project or independently with the generation separate from the distribution, as is the case with Weza Power. We're active at the moment in 5 countries across Central and Eastern Africa. With a number of project partners and project SPVs in each of those countries. Do we have any luck with the slides? No. Okay. Can you maybe send it? I mean, I can carry on. I can carry on without the slide deck if necessary. If we can get them, we'll upload them. But if not, I'll just carry on. So, what else want to say about Weza Power? It's a new utility in Burundi that's developed under a PPP, public-private partnership project, in close collaboration with the government of Burundi. Our objective is to rapidly accelerate electricity access in Burundi. We'll invest in building out the grid and operating that grid sustainably over the 25 years of the public-private partnership agreement. We'll continue to buy the power through an electricity purchase agreement with Régie des Eaux, the incumbent utility in Burundi, who will also continue to operate the areas that they currently serve as the distribution utility, mainly in the urban areas of Burundi. The project started in about 2022, and we signed an MOU with the government of Burundi that unlocked a number of pre-feasibility studies and culminated in the signature of an interim PPP agreement in December 2023. And our objective, so that actually underpins $60 million of investment, $10 million in project development, and $50 million in CapEx in the interim phase. And the objective is for us to complete all of the interim phase activities between now and the end of 2025, and then to transition smoothly into the scale-up under a full PPP agreement that is currently under negotiation. So the benefit of that interim or pilot phase is that it allows us to fast-track or parallel track a number of the CapEx and utility operationalization activities while that PPP agreement continues to be under negotiation. And that actually quite drastically shortens the overall project development and implementation timeline, and also allows us to develop a track record with our partners in the government of Burundi as well as our investors. I'm just trying to recall the slides in my mind as we continue. The other benefit of the PPP obviously is our ability to leverage a much wider range of capital sources than would be traditionally available under a pure public sector utility support package. So we have access to obviously the equity that Anzana Group is bringing into the project for project development, as well as the actual project capex and the project loans that we will be raising. We have access to a number of grants that are really geared towards the private sector that support project development and implementation. But on top of that, we're also able to access the public sector lending windows in order to deploy the capex under the PPP agreement. And so that ability to blend the capital sources brings down the cost of capital. And I think as we saw Eli presenting, any ability that we have to bring down the cost of capital actually will reduce the tariff and improve the sustainability of the project. And we're particularly excited about the climate finance component of this, where that cross-subsidy effect from e-cooking can substantially bring down the tariffs as Eli has presented. I just want to highlight that the tariffs he showed are indicative tariffs designed to explain what the impact would be in terms of tariff reduction. The tariff itself is subject to a detailed tariff study and discussions in partnership with the government of Burundi to arrive at a final tariff model. So we have a number of the sources of capital already locked in and committed. So we have funding from a number of U.S. government agencies supporting the development work. We are part of the World Bank Ascent program, providing $10 million of financing to project CapEx, and we are in advanced discussions with a number of additional lenders. Thank you very much. Let's see how many slides we can skip through and how much of this I can skip. So, yeah, maybe I just step back to what I was saying about the pilot versus the long-term scope in terms of the overall objectives of the project. So as I was explaining, this is two parallel tracks, and as we complete the pilot scope, it'll unlock the longer-term scope with an initial $60 million of investment in project development and project CapEx. Our target is to achieve 42,000 connections in that pilot phase by the end of 2025, which provides new electricity access to 900,000 people. And as we move to the PPP phase, that number will increase to 9 million people with 1.35 million connections, which is the 70% electricity access rate that Eli was referring to earlier. And that has a capital requirement of 1.4 billion US dollars. So this is what I was explaining about the blended financing and our ability to reduce the cost of capital through and achieve financing from a wider pool of capital, which is obviously required for such a significant investment amount, and any ability we have to blend it with more concessionary cost of capital will bring down will allow us to reduce the tariff. And these are some of our funding partners. So I was mentioning the US government agencies that are funding development work. IFC is also supporting development work and is committed to provide capital for the pilot phase. MEGA is providing a guarantee, and the World Bank is providing $10 million of financing in the pilot phase. We expect this tent to broaden. There are a few additional investors coming in at the pilot phase, and even more will be invited in as we scale up for the PPP phase. Just to mention the other entities that are pointed out here are GridWorks and BII. Those are the principal shareholders GridWorks is the principal shareholder of Anzana Electric Group that is providing its equity into the project. And this is all aligned with the Mission 300 ambitions of the various DFIs, of which the Ascent program that is providing capital into the project is a part. So we're well advanced in project development. We're actually moving to procurement in order to begin construction in the early part of next year. We've been working with a lot of very specialized partners on this. NREC International has done our pre-feasibility work and is currently doing our feasibility work for the full PPP phase. Our partner Artelia has helped us to develop a very comprehensive environmental and social management framework in line with IFC and other performance standards. We've had support from various US government agencies. We have Tetra Tech that is fast-tracking the operational planning and operationalization of the utility. And of course, our Article 6 group has been supporting us on the e-cooking component and the carbon finance. So we have a number of, I would say, complementary aspects of the project that we're pursuing together with the core kind of utility development, bring in small-scale generators who are active in Burundi or may develop particularly small-scale hydro project in Burundi. We're creating a framework for integrating any mini-grids that exist or are deployed in the future so that we don't inadvertently slow down any mini-grid development. We are working on an industrial development scope of work in order to figure out how we can stimulate additional electricity demand by identifying business cases and business models that can be developed in rural areas, particularly things like agricultural transformation and refrigeration. And I guess the key one here is the e-cooking component, which quite rightly our partners in the government have heavily emphasized its benefits on household air quality, deforestation, and the environment, but also crucially for its impact on electricity demand. So any ability that we have to stimulate additional consumption of electricity will improve project economics and bring down the tariff and make the project much more sustainable. And I think the other component, as we've heard from the other presenters today, is the way in which this is a pilot project for carbon finance within Burundi, and really, hopefully already within the pilot phase of the Weza Power project will be a demonstration case of how this type of financing can be leveraged. So that's the end of my slides. And I think Jackson is taking over from Eli to take us through the rest. Jackson, sorry, I did ask if the minister might mind just saying a few words. Sorry, and then I think we can open the floor for questions after that. Mr. Minister.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I will deliver my speech in French or English. Tout le monde comprend le français? Everyone can understand? Yes? Ok, merci beaucoup. Comme ce matin, le vice-président nous a visité dans le stand et a encouragé les efforts en cours. Nous continuons dans la même voie pour encourager les efforts en cours pour jouer le rôle que nous devrons jouer. Ça, c'est le premier élément. Deuxième élément, j'étais aussi dans la réunion de haut niveau des ministres pour la finance climat. Et je vais répéter l'intervention que j'ai faite là-bas. Nous sommes maintenant devant une réalité que nous devons regarder en face. Dans les pays en voie de développement, surtout les pays africains, vous le savez tous, ces pays jouent un rôle important dans la régulation de la température mondiale parce qu'ils disposent des forêts, ils disposent de la biodiversité. Mais en même temps, ces pays utilisent le bois chaque jour. C'est-à-dire, ces pays coupent le bois et l'utilisent pour la cuisson chaque jour. Alors, quand nous sommes en train de parler que nous sommes engagés à protéger l'environnement, il est impossible d'arriver à un résultat visible si on ne trouve pas une solution alternative à cette énergie de cuisson. C'est pourquoi moi je suis très content quand je vois de telles initiatives qui parlent de l'électrification et énergie de cuisson. Parce que dans les pays en voie de développement, on est obligé de couper l'arbre. Parce qu'on est obligé de manger en utilisant le bois. Si on ne trouvait pas une solution à ça, le rôle que nous sommes en train de jouer aujourd'hui de réguler la température mondiale par nos forêts, son rôle va disparaître. Alors, maintenant, nous voyons des effets extrêmes du changement climatique, notamment les sécheresses, les inondations. Alors que nous continuons à jouer ce rôle de préserver nos forêts. Et si on continue à couper ces forêts, c'est-à-dire le petit rôle que nous jouons aujourd'hui, ça va aller en disparaissant. Alors, c'est pourquoi je soutiens à ce qu'on puisse définir des priorités. Et moi, ce qui est important pour moi, ce sont les 4 priorités. Premièrement, c'est de trouver une solution alternative à l'énergie de cuisson. Nous devrons remplacer le bois par soit l'électricité, soit le gaz. Aussi, les fours améliorés. On n'a pas de choix. Ça, c'est la première priorité. Deuxième priorité, nous avons vu que tous les pays disposent de documents importants. Le premier document, c'est la CDN. Le deuxième document, c'est le plan d'adaptation. Et ces documents contiennent de bons projets, des projets prioritaires pour l'atténuation et l'adaptation. Malheureusement, dans quelques mois, on va se retrouver dans la phase de soumission d'autres CDN. La date limite, je pense que c'est au mois de mars ou mai 2025. Mais avant de soumettre un document nouveau, il nous faut une évaluation. Quand on va faire l'évaluation, on va trouver que les projets n'ont pas été financés. Et finalement, nous ne sommes pas en train d'avancer. C'est pourquoi la deuxième priorité, c'est d'acheminer les financements dans la mise en œuvre des projets qui sont dans le document de la CDN et le plan d'adaptation. Troisième priorité, nous avons constaté que quand on parle de changement climatique, il y a des éléments qui reviennent directement. C'est la sécheresse, c'est l'inondation. L'inondation a un impact direct sur la santé. La sécheresse a aussi un impact sur la santé. Et donc, on ne peut pas parler de changement climatique si on ne parle pas aussi de la santé. Et j'espère que la troisième priorité, les CDN qui devraient venir, devraient inclure aussi les aspects de la santé. Et enfin, quatrième priorité, c'est de trouver un autre mécanisme de financement, c'est le crédit carbone. En utilisant nos forêts, en utilisant aussi la tourbe, en utilisant aussi les fours améliorés. Mais, comme ces projets génèrent des crédits carbone, on en discute, on discute le marché, mais personne ne va pas discuter du partage des crédits qui seront générés. Alors j'espère que cette quatrième priorité sera aussi mise sur la table pour discussion. Je vous remercie.
Okay. Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Je pense qu'on peut, comme nous n'avons pas de modérateur, on va juste passer aux questions, ouvrir la séance pour les différentes questions. So if anybody has any questions, please go ahead.
My name is Simon Batchelor. I'm director of a program called Modern Energy Cooking Services, which is a £55 million program run by UK Aid and which focuses on electric cooking and has done for the last 6-7 years, gathering evidence on energy efficient appliances. This is the first I've heard of this, even though part of our program is ESMAP of the World Bank, and we are also advising the Ascent program. That may be a gap in my knowledge, I'm not very sure, but there certainly is room for discussion. I'm amazed at the Minister's aspiration for this program, and it's brilliant. Where we could contribute is in Eli, I think, said that you were not sure how people might culturally respond to electric cooking. And we have long experience now, mainly in East Africa, I admit, in Kenya, that is pivoted. In Uganda, we have an e-cooking tariff that was introduced. In Tanzania, we're just doing some work with schools, with standards, with repair and maintenance. I'm very sorry, it's not so much a question as a pitch to actually cooperate with you. We have our own funding, and there will be an announcement at the IEA session tomorrow, which will include us in some UK commitments. We know BII very well, of course. So there are possibilities here, and I'm not asking for money, I'm offering money.
Thank you, Simon. I think as you've seen from some of the slides, that all the parties are very much open to partnership, and at Weza Power in particular, we look to bring in area specialists. We are not an e-cooking company; we are an electricity company, and so very, very much open to deepening the discussion on that. S'il y a d'autres questions, Monsieur le DG?
Merci. Merci de m'accorder la parole pour poser la question. So, I would common understanding I would like to express in English. So we are thankful for organizing this event. And thank you, Minister, for being with us. We are thankful for that, for supporting the energy projects to go ahead with the climate change mitigation with energy cooking. My question is only one. We are going by promoting e-cooking. We need to see that the energy will be affordable to the population. Will it, up to your studies you have made in Weza Power, can you assure the public that the affordability will be guaranteed for the Burundi population? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. When I was in Burundi in October, we did a field visit, and certain members of the team stopped the truck on the way back and in order to buy charcoal. And these are people who are, salaried employees, so they don't have an affordability issue. But they said they were taking home the charcoal in order to use it within their household, partly in order to reduce the chances of being pushed up to a higher electricity tariff. So your consumption band, if it goes up, then you'll pay more per kilowatt hour. So they were managing the cooking aspect in order not to bump up to a higher overall per kilowatt hour cost. And so I think we absolutely need to think about this type of thing in the tariff structuring. That work will be subject of a detailed study that we're actually currently recruiting consultants for. And it's something that we'll obviously do in very close partnership with yourselves. But the first phase of that is to gather a large amount of information as inputs into the tariff model. And one of those critical inputs is the cost of capital. And so that's why we were emphasizing today not only the ability of the public-private partnership to access a broad range of capital sources, some of which are highly concessionary, but also how crucial this carbon component then becomes. Because then we are able to actually use those credits to cross-subsidize the tariff and further bring down the tariff for the population of Burundi.
Can I just address that last question as well? So over in East Africa, the electricity tariff is 24 cents. With an energy efficient electric stove, it's cheaper than charcoal and LPG in every country we study. We've done 15 different countries, and it always comes out cheaper. For a given meal, some electric energy efficient stoves can cook for 1/10 of the price of LPG. Across the whole range of menus and cooking, it generally comes out at about half.
Je ne sais pas s'il y a d'autres questions.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Tajeli Urio. Shortly you can call me Taj. I work with the Southpaw, one of the leading global companies on carbon market, but also on the advisory. I'm quite happy to hear about the progress that is happening in Burundi because, I was trying to find out what is happening there so that we can expand our market in that country. And I'm happy that you are taking a really a good step toward that because the Article 6 market is now the talk of town, but also it's the one that, you can see a big benefit flowing to the country, particularly on the investment from the more of the ITIR kind of solutions and technology. For me, or for us as Southpaw, I think we can play also a critical role on the regulation and the legislation. This is something that we have been working with the UNDP to other number of countries in South Asia, Latin, but also in Africa, particularly Western Africa and some in Southern Africa. And I think the knowledge that we bring in and the experience, you can come up with the, framework which is quite informed with the market trends and what is really happening in the markets, so that at the end of the day, when you do have this framework in place, it's something that it's going to attract business flow into the country and not more of scaring of the investors and this number of the project. It's more of a balanced, kind of business environment that we propose. Of course, we will not make a final decision. It's remained to be a sovereign position to make a final decision what is included in there. But it's great to have something that is quite informed about the market and what is happening. We have seen that there is big issue on the capacity, particularly from the people who make decision. And it's important also to emphasize and maybe offer more opportunity of providing the technical capacity, so that when our colleagues make decisions, they make something that they know that this is what we're deciding. And yeah, so I'm happy and I'm ready to connect. Thanks.
I would just echo what you said. I think that this is actually a really exciting time for Article 6 implementation, because we are past that first phase where the first people who are putting together these processes were the first people doing it. And there was skepticism in the market about whether these credits, there was going to be demand for these credits. And we now have 141 pilot projects around the world that have been set up and are in process in development under this Article 6 framework. So the time is really ripe for countries to do pilot projects like this, because Eli was talking about the positive feedback loop in electricity markets. I would highlight a second positive feedback loop, which is as soon as you start setting up these processes, you open up the tap for carbon finance. So the first carbon finance that comes in through a project like this can lead to exponentially more carbon finance as the processes get really well developed. So I would echo what you said. I think that this is a really exciting time, and bringing together partners to make sure that all of the capacity is in place for these first projects will set up huge potential to attract carbon finance for a full range of projects.
Deux éléments d'intervention en français. I have just a question. We came here just to try to make a pitch for the entire country for Weza Power, but also for the country to be really visible to the rest of the world, to bring different types of fundings to the country. And what are the next steps for the... We are in NDC Partnership Pavilion now. What are the next steps? What can we do? Like next steps at Weza Power and at the Ministry of Environment and others. What are the perspectives? Number two, my intervention will be an answer to the question that was raised by the Director General of Energy. Juste de manière simple, lors du montage du projet de distribution, on s'est convenu avec l'État qu'on travaille ensemble et on prend le leadership en tant qu'acteur industriel pour mobiliser les financements les moins chers possibles. Alors, quand on parle de coût du capital pour les mathématiciens, ça veut dire c'est la moyenne pondérée des coûts de l'argent, des coûts de chaque type de financement. Le fonds propre, retour sur investissement. Les subventions, retour sur impact, c'est 0%, mais l'impact doit être maximisé pour avoir les subventions. Alors, les financements concessionnels, taux d'intérêt très très bas. Alors, les autres sources, en faisant la moyenne pondérée de toutes ces sources de financement, on trouve un pourcentage assez faible qu'on appelle le coût du capital et qui est fortement corrélé au tarif au dernier usager. Alors, l'objectif poursuivi, c'est vraiment d'avoir un tarif le plus abordable possible pour la population, pour que ce dernier lui sert, l'électricité lui sert comme vraiment un capital pour le développement. Donc, c'est vraiment dans cette logique qui est une orientation du gouvernement, mais qui est aussi un objectif poursuivi au niveau de Weza Power pour tenter de stimuler la croissance économique à travers différents mécanismes tels que présentés ici. Merci.
Okay, thanks, Donna. I think we're being asked to close this. So I think thanks for highlighting again the impact on cost of capital. I think in terms of next steps, Eli set some of those out, but we are beginning our deployment under the pilot project for 42,000 connections. It's already the opportunity to start working in an e-cooking pilot, but it's crucial that we do this in close coordination with the ministry so that the setting out of the Article 6 framework is done in alignment with the development of that pilot. And I think with that, Okay, great. Well, I think the next presenter is here and is a perfect segue, and we might stick around and watch it. So thank you very much.